Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something real, something that hits deep, but most people never dare to face. You see, when it comes to love and connection, we all crave certainty. That feeling of being valued, seen, and respected. But what happens when the person you care about, the one you give your energy, your time, your heart to, starts pulling away, playing cold, and leaving you confused? I'm talking about the avoidant personality, the person who keeps you close enough to feel wanted, but distant enough to never truly commit. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something powerful. The signs an avoidant is using you. Because the truth is, you deserve a connection built on authenticity, not control. You deserve to be loved, not managed. And the moment you recognize when someone is using you to fill their emptiness, you take your power back. So in this session, we're going to uncover the patterns, the emotional games, and the subtle manipulations that keep you trapped in confusion, and I'll show you exactly how to break free. By the end of this talk, you won't just understand avoidant behavior. You'll master your emotional boundaries, elevate your self-worth, and learn how to attract the kind of love that empowers you instead of drains you. Recognizing emotional inconsistency is one of the most powerful steps in understanding when an avoidant is using you. It's the invisible red flag that often hides behind charm, warmth, and occasional affection. In the beginning, they might come across as deeply interested, engaged, and even affectionate. They text often, show excitement, and make you feel special as if they finally found something meaningful. But then, without any clear reason, their energy shifts. Suddenly, they become distant, quiet, or emotionally unavailable. This sudden change leaves you questioning yourself, wondering what went wrong, what you said, or what you could have done differently. This confusion is not random. It's part of the emotional pattern of an avoidant who uses affection as a form of control rather than connection. Emotional inconsistency is how they keep you off balance. When they pull back, you start chasing that early version of them, the one who made you feel safe and seen. You try harder, love deeper, and give more, hoping they'll return to that warm space again. But this is the trap. Avoidants thrive on emotional distance because it keeps them in control. When they sense you're emotionally attached, they start withdrawing, knowing you'll try to fix the connection. And the more effort you invest, the less they have to give. They create an emotional roller coaster where your highs depend on their moments of attention and your lows are shaped by their absence. Over time, this dynamic can make you doubt your worth, question your instincts, and even lose touch with your emotional clarity. When you start noticing this inconsistency, the key is to see it for what it is, not a reflection of your inadequacy, but a reflection of their fear of intimacy. Avoidants are often driven by the need to protect themselves from vulnerability. Deep down, they fear being controlled, judged, or emotionally overwhelmed. So instead of leaning into closeness, they retreat. But when they sense that retreat might cause them to lose your attention completely, they come back just enough to keep you hooked. It's a push and pull cycle designed to maintain emotional control without true commitment. Understanding this pattern allows you to stop reacting and start observing. When their affection turns into distance, don't chase. Pause. Pay attention to their consistency, not their intensity. Anyone can show affection for a few days or weeks, but consistency is the real proof of emotional maturity. When someone values you, their energy doesn't fluctuate based on convenience. They show up, communicate, and take accountability for their emotional presence. An avoidant using you will only show up when it benefits them. When they're lonely, bored, or need validation, once that need is met, they disappear again. You'll notice emotional inconsistency in how they respond to your needs as well. When you express feelings or seek clarity, they might label you as too emotional or needy. They shift blame, make you feel like you're overreacting, or even turn the conversation around to make themselves the victim. This is emotional deflection, a way to avoid responsibility for their inconsistency while keeping you focused on earning their approval again. The goal is to condition you into silence, to make you suppress your emotions in exchange for brief moments of connection. True love doesn't operate on confusion or mixed signals. When someone's emotions are genuine, they don't turn affection into a guessing game. Recognizing emotional inconsistency means valuing your peace over their unpredictability. It means understanding that someone's hot. And cold behavior isn't passion, it's emotional immaturity. And when you finally see that clearly, you stop taking their distance personally. You stop chasing what keeps hurting you. You realize that your worth isn't measured by how hard you fight for someone's attention, but by how confidently you walk away from emotional inconsistency. That realization is where your freedom begins. When an avoidant person starts to use silence and withdrawal as a form of control, it can feel deeply confusing and emotionally draining. At first, their quietness might seem harmless. Maybe they just need space. Maybe they're busy, or maybe they're dealing with something personal. But over time, you begin to notice a pattern. Every time you express your feelings, share your needs, or ask for more clarity, they respond not with communication, but with silence. This isn't just emotional distance. It's a deliberate withdrawal that creates tension and uncertainty. It's their way of maintaining power in the relationship without saying a single word. The more they pull away, the more anxious you become, and that anxiety is what they unconsciously or consciously use to control the dynamic. Avoidants often learned early in life that emotional closeness feels unsafe. To protect themselves, They develop the habit of retreating when things get intimate or emotionally charged. But when that pattern turns into manipulation, silence becomes a weapon rather than a boundary. Instead of expressing their discomfort or discussing issues, they simply disappear emotionally, sometimes even physically. You might notice them becoming distant, less responsive, or emotionally numb after moments of closeness or conflict. What's happening here is not just avoidance. It's an attempt to reassert control by creating emotional scarcity. They know you'll feel the tension. They know you'll want to fix it, and they rely on that reaction to keep you chasing their approval. This silent treatment often leads you to overthink. You replay conversations, analyze your words, and question whether you did something wrong. That self-doubt is exactly what keeps you trapped in their emotional loop. The silence isn't meant to resolve anything. It's meant to shift the focus away from their behavior and onto your insecurity. Over time, this trains you to avoid conflict, to hold back your truth, and to prioritize their comfort over your emotional well-being. It's a subtle but powerful form of emotional conditioning, one that teaches you to equate peace with their silence rather than genuine resolution. When you're dealing with someone who uses withdrawal as control, it's essential to notice how you feel in their absence. Do you feel peace or do you feel panic? A healthy relationship gives you space that feels secure, not space that feels like punishment. Avoidants who are using you don't create distance to heal or to reflect. They create it to dominate the emotional rhythm. They want to be the one who decides when connection happens and when it doesn't. This unpredictability keeps you emotionally dependent, hoping that if you just do things right, they'll return to being warm again. But their return isn't about love. It's about reestablishing control once they sense they're losing your attention or influence. The silence can also be masked as needing time to think or wanting space, but real space comes with reassurance and honesty. They'll say, I just need a little time, but they won't clarify what that means or how long it will last. They keep you in limbo because uncertainty fuels their control. The less you know, the more you wait. And the longer you wait, the more power they hold. The emotional control here isn't loud or obvious. It's quiet and invisible, built on the hope that you'll keep reaching out while they decide when to engage. The way out of this cycle begins with recognizing silence for what it is, not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their emotional maturity. You have to stop chasing answers from someone who chooses avoidance over honesty. The moment you stop reacting to their withdrawal, the control begins to break. Instead of filling the silence with apologies or explanations, fill it with self-respect. You cannot build connection with someone who uses disconnection as a strategy. Real relationships grow through communication, not control. When someone truly cares, they talk, they listen, they work through discomfort. Silence should never make you feel small or unsure of your value. So when an avoidant uses withdrawal as power, understand this: their silence says more about them than your worth ever could. The strength lies in your ability to remain calm, centered, and unwilling to be manipulated by emotional absence. Once you stop responding to their silence with desperation and start responding with self-respect, you reclaim your power, and that's the moment you set yourself free. When an avoidant person begins taking from you emotionally without giving back, the relationship becomes unbalanced, one-sided, and deeply exhausting. At first, it might not even seem obvious. You give your time, understanding, and emotional energy freely because you care. You listen to their struggles, you accommodate their moods, and you make excuses for their distance, believing that with enough patience, they'll eventually open up. But slowly, you start to notice a pattern. You're always the one giving, reassuring, initiating conversations, and keeping the connection alive. They take your empathy, your loyalty, and your effort, yet offer very little emotional reciprocity in return. This is one of the clearest signs an avoidant is using you. They take your emotional availability as a resource, but never invest theirs. Avoidants often have a deep need to feel in control without the vulnerability that real connection demands. They crave validation, but fear intimacy. So they position themselves in relationships where they can receive care, attention, and affection, but on their terms. They may open up just enough to create an illusion of closeness, sharing a few personal stories or showing brief moments of vulnerability. But once you start to emotionally invest, they retreat, knowing they've already secured your empathy. It becomes a cycle where you keep giving, hoping your consistency will eventually make them feel safe enough to reciprocate. But what you don't realize is that for them, your giving has become a form of emotional supply, a steady source of validation that requires no genuine effort on their part. They might come to you when they need comfort, advice, or reassurance, but disappear when you need the same. They expect your patience when they're distant, but offer little compassion when you're hurting. This imbalance can leave you feeling drained, unseen, and emotionally depleted. The avoidant benefits from your nurturing nature while maintaining the illusion that they are the ones setting boundaries. It's not about partnership anymore. It's about them taking what they need to feel stable while you're left trying to earn their engagement. Over time, this dynamic teaches you to over-function in the relationship. You start thinking for both people, managing both emotional sides, constantly trying to prevent disconnection. You adjust your tone, your needs, your boundaries, all to avoid triggering their withdrawal. But no matter how much you give, it's never enough. That's because avoidants who use others emotionally aren't looking for balance. They're looking for control without responsibility. Their fear of intimacy makes them feel threatened by genuine reciprocity, so they keep you giving just enough to maintain their emotional comfort zone. This kind of emotional taking is subtle but extremely damaging. It can make you doubt your worth because you keep pouring love into a space that never fills. You start to internalize their detachment as a reflection of your inadequacy, believing that if you were more patient or more understanding, things would change. But it's not about your effort. It's about their inability to meet you halfway. When someone truly values you, they don't let you carry the emotional weight alone. They notice when you're giving too much and step forward to meet you in the middle. But an avoidant using you won't do that because their priority isn't mutual growth. It's self-preservation. The only way to break this cycle is to stop feeding it. Stop giving energy to someone who doesn't give it back. Emotional giving should flow naturally, not as a desperate attempt to earn connection. Once you pull your energy back, you'll start to see how dependent they've become on your giving. Their reactions will reveal the truth. If they truly care, they'll adjust. If they were only taking, they'll distance themselves even more, and that's when you'll know the difference between love and emotional convenience. Real love is reciprocal. It's not about one person constantly pouring into an empty cup. It's about two people nurturing each other with presence, honesty, and effort. When you start valuing your energy and setting limits on how much you give, you'll no longer be a source of emotional supply for someone who only takes. Instead, you'll become a person who attracts balance, respect, and genuine connection. And that's when the dynamic shifts, because once an avoidant realizes you're no longer giving blindly, their control ends and your power begins. Being kept as an option rather than a priority is one of the most painful yet opening realities when dealing with an avoidant who's using you. At first, they make you feel special. They might give you attention, show affection, and even express how much they value having you in their life. But as time goes on, their behavior reveals a pattern. They show up only when it's convenient for them. You begin to realize that you're always available for them, but they're rarely available for you. They reach out when they need emotional comfort, validation, or company. But when you need support, they're too busy, too tired, or simply not in the right headspace. It's not because they don't know your worth. It's because they're using your availability to fill their emotional gaps without giving you the commitment or consistency you deserve. Avoidants often struggle with deep fears of intimacy and dependency. They want connection, but they also want freedom, and that internal conflict makes them seek relationships where they can keep emotional control. By keeping you as an option, they get to enjoy the benefits of connection without the responsibility of true closeness. They want to know you're there when they need you, but they don't want to be accountable for your emotional needs. It's a dynamic where they take your loyalty for granted because they know you care enough to stay even when they're inconsistent. They might even give you just enough attention to keep you hooked. A message here, a kind gesture there, small doses of affection to remind you that you still matter to them, just not enough to make you feel secure. This push and pull dynamic can leave you in a constant state of confusion. One day they're warm and engaging, the next they're detached and unavailable. You start overanalyzing everything. Their tone, their text, their behavior, trying to decode what changed. But the truth is nothing really changed. Their inconsistency is intentional, not in a manipulative sense of cruelty, but as a defense mechanism. By keeping you uncertain, they keep control. They don't want to lose you completely, but they also don't want to get too close. So they hover in the middle, giving you enough to keep your hope alive, yet withholding enough to avoid true vulnerability. You'll notice that when you start pulling away or showing less interest, they suddenly become more attentive. It's not because they've changed, it's because they sense a threat to their emotional control. The moment they feel you slipping away, they re-engage, maybe with an apology, affection, or a grand gesture, only to retreat again once they feel safe that you're still emotionally invested. It's a cycle of intermittent reinforcement that keeps you trapped in uncertainty, constantly craving the version of them that only appears when they fear losing you. This behavior conditions you to accept less than you deserve because you're always waiting for the next moment of connection. The painful truth is, when someone truly values you, you never have to question where you stand. You never have to wonder if you're a priority because their consistency makes it obvious. When you're dealing with an avoidant who keeps you as an option, the relationship always feels like you're trying to earn a place in their life. You're giving loyalty to someone who treats you like a backup plan. The longer you stay in that dynamic, the more it chips away at your self-worth. Breaking free begins with recognizing the pattern and reclaiming your value. You can't force someone to prioritize you, but you can decide not to be someone's convenience. The moment you stop being easily available, you shift the power dynamic. When you no longer respond immediately, no longer drop everything for them, and no longer accept inconsistency as love, you send a clear message: you are no one's option. Real connection requires effort, consistency, and mutual respect. And if they can't meet you there, it's not your job to wait for them to evolve. When you start prioritizing yourself, something powerful happens. you stop settling for crumbs of affection and start demanding the full meal of emotional reciprocity, you stop hoping they'll choose you and start realizing you've already chosen yourself. And in that realization lies your strength, because the moment you know you deserve to be a priority, you'll never again allow yourself to be someone's temporary escape. You'll walk away not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And that's the kind of love that always leads to freedom. When an avoidant uses vulnerability as a tool to regain power instead of to connect, it can be one of the most deceptive and confusing experiences in a relationship. Vulnerability, when genuine, is supposed to build trust, deepen understanding, and create emotional intimacy. But when an avoidant uses it manipulatively, it becomes a strategy, a way to reset your sympathy and regain control whenever they feel you slipping away. This is not the kind of openness that creates closeness. It's a carefully timed emotional display designed to keep you engaged and emotionally invested. After periods of distance or coldness, when you've finally had enough and start pulling back, that's when they suddenly become open. They share a personal story, reveal past pain, or admit they're bad at relationships. They might talk about childhood wounds, a difficult breakup, or a fear of being hurt again. These confessions seem heartfelt, and sometimes they are rooted in real experiences, but their purpose isn't always about healing or connection. It's about drawing your empathy back in, reminding you why you cared in the first place. It's as if they're saying, this is why I act the way I do, please understand me. And because you're compassionate, you soften, you forgive, you start making excuses for their behavior again, believing that your patience and love can heal them. This cycle of selective vulnerability is powerful because it plays directly on your empathy. You start to think their emotional inconsistency isn't manipulation, but trauma. You tell yourself they just need more time, more love, more reassurance. But what's actually happening is emotional control disguised as authenticity. Every time they sense they might lose you, they open up just enough to pull you back in. And once you're emotionally hooked again, they close off and return to their avoidant pattern. It's like they use their pain as both a shield and a shield to justify their behavior and a hook to keep you attached. True vulnerability requires accountability. It's not just sharing pain, it's showing a willingness to work through it and grow. But an avoidant using vulnerability for control doesn't take responsibility. They use their story to elicit sympathy, not change. They might even subtly shift blame onto their past or their trauma to excuse the way they treat you. Over time, you might find yourself trapped in a caretaker role, trying to fix them while your own emotional needs go unmet. You become so focused on understanding their wounds that you stop noticing how those wounds are being used to manipulate your compassion. This form of emotional manipulation is dangerous because it keeps you locked in a cycle of hope and disappointment. You keep believing that if they can open up a little, maybe one day they'll open up completely. But that day never comes because their vulnerability isn't about growth. It's about control. They use it like a reset button. Whenever the relationship starts slipping out of their hands, they press it to regain emotional leverage. The key to breaking this cycle is discernment. Not every emotional confession deserves unlimited empathy. The real test of genuine vulnerability is what comes after it. Do they make an effort to change, to communicate better, to meet you halfway? Or do they go right back to avoidance once they've regained your trust? If it's the latter, then what you're witnessing isn't healing, it's manipulation. And no matter how much you care, you cannot heal someone who uses their pain as a weapon to control connection. It's not cruel to stop giving endless empathy to someone who refuses to grow. It's self-respect. You can have compassion for their past without sacrificing your peace in the present. Real love doesn't require you to rescue someone who won't take responsibility for their actions. When you start recognizing the difference between vulnerability that builds connection and vulnerability that manipulates, you reclaim your emotional clarity. You stop being pulled in by temporary displays of openness and start valuing consistency over sympathy. The truth is, someone who truly wants to connect won't just tell you their story. They'll show you through effort, change, and consistency that they value the relationship. Anything less is emotional theater designed to keep you involved without commitment. And the moment you stop falling for performative vulnerability, you stop being controlled by it. You begin to see that your compassion is a strength, but it must be protected. Because love that drains you isn't love. It's control wearing the mask of closeness. Reclaiming your boundaries and refusing to feed an avoidance, emotional detachment is one of the most empowering steps you can take toward emotional freedom. For too long, you may have been operating from a place of giving understanding, giving patience, giving second chances, hoping your consistency would melt their walls. But boundaries aren't barriers to love. They're the framework that protects it. When an avoidant is using you, they often test how far they can go. How much silence, inconsistency, or detachment you'll tolerate before you walk away. Every time you accept their emotional absence without consequence, you teach them that your love doesn't require respect. Reclaiming your boundaries isn't about punishing them. It's about teaching yourself that your peace is non-negotiable. Avoidants thrive in emotional imbalance. They rely on your empathy to do the work that they're avoiding, the work of emotional responsibility. They know you care enough to reach out first, to keep the conversation going, to fix what's broken. But when you finally stop doing that, something powerful happens. The entire dynamic shifts. You stop being the emotional caretaker and start being the self-respecting individual who knows when enough is enough. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting them off with anger. It means communicating clearly what you will and will not accept. It means saying, I won't chase after silence, or I deserve consistency, and standing by those words even when it's uncomfortable. At first, they might react to your boundaries with confusion or even resistance. They're used to having control through withdrawal and unpredictability, so when you stop feeding that system, they may try harder to re-engage. They might test your resolve by coming back with charm, affection, or sudden vulnerability. But this is where your strength is tested. Reclaiming your boundaries means not falling for temporary changes. It means focusing on patterns, not promises. If their actions don't align with their words, you maintain your distance. You stop letting their inconsistency dictate your emotional state. Boundaries also mean protecting your emotional energy from being drained. Every time you overextend yourself to keep someone in your life, you're neglecting your own needs. You start losing touch with who you are outside of the relationship. But once you draw the line, you begin to reconnect with your own voice, your own goals, and your own worth. You remember that love isn't about constantly proving yourself. It's about mutual respect and emotional safety. And avoidance detachment stops working the moment you stop rewarding it with attention. Silence loses power when you stop chasing it. Distance becomes meaningless when you focus on your own growth instead of their approval. The process of reclaiming your boundaries isn't easy because it requires emotional discipline. There will be moments when you want to reach out to explain, to make things right, but those impulses are driven by old conditioning. You're used to equating love with effort, even when that effort goes unreciprocated. True strength comes when you resist the urge to fix what you didn't break. You remind yourself that the person who truly values you will never make you beg for clarity or consistency. They'll meet you with equal energy because that's what real connection looks like. When you hold firm to your boundaries, you send a message not only to them but also to yourself that your heart is valuable, your time is sacred, and your energy is not to be wasted on emotional games. The avoidant may either rise to meet your new standard or fall away, but either outcome serves your growth. If they rise, it's because they've learned to respect your boundaries. If they fall away, it's because they were never capable of giving you what you deserved in the first place. Either way, you win because you've reclaimed your power. Reclaiming your boundaries doesn't close your heart. It refines it. It teaches you to love without losing yourself. It helps you see that compassion without limits becomes self-sacrifice, and understanding without boundaries becomes self-neglect. When you finally stop feeding their detachment and start nourishing your self-worth, something shifts within you. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And that choice, that quiet decision to no longer accept less than you deserve, becomes the foundation for a life and love built on strength, clarity, and respect. That is the moment when you truly break free from being used and begin to live from a place of emotional power and peace.